Our guest today is Dovid White, who moved to Israel in 2012 from the suburbs of Detroit, Michigan. Dovid lives in Jerusalem and is a chiropractor. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here, and thanks to Dovid White, who's joining us from Jerusalem for our first episode of Israeli Perspectives. Dovid, let's start at the very beginning. What prompted you to want to immigrate to Israel?
The short answer is Zionism, but it was such a great time when we made Aliyah, when we immigrated to Israel. We pray 3 times a day, and throughout all the other prayers that we say, whether it's on food or anything, we're constantly talking about Israel, the rebuilding of Jerusalem, the well-being and safety of its citizens. It's been so ingrained in our psyche, the importance of Israel and living here and being here. And coming here just 2 weeks after I graduated from college, and my wife was 8 months pregnant at the time, it just seemed like the perfect time and opportunity for us to start our lives with a new career, with our family growing. It was just a great time for us to explore this part of ourselves, to immigrate.
That's lovely. So you said short answer is Zionism. What exactly is Zionism, in your words?
Zionism? That's the ideal. That's the dream. It's always, they say the 2,000-year-old dream of Jews living in Israel, the promised land. This is what we've always aspired to. It's what we pray for multiple times a day in various ways. It's constantly put at the forefront of what we're thinking, of what our ultimate goal is.
So you see your living in Israel as fulfilling a religious mandate, a biblical mandate then?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. That's great. Could you tell me though, I mean, it's you moved from the States to Israel. Can't imagine that being very easy for immigrants in any country. Tell me generally, what are some of the issues new immigrants may face in Israel, and what are some of the specific issues that you faced as a new immigrant in Israel?
Sure. As you mentioned, there's a huge differences between the U.S. and Israel. Huge culture shock, the language, customs, starting a new job. I was at the beginning of my career as well, and we were fresh parents, so there was a lot going on at the same time. When we immigrated, I understood Hebrew to a point. Like, I could order falafel at a shop, but that was it. To really converse, I could read biblical Hebrew, but to converse properly with somebody is completely different in modern Hebrew. So that was definitely challenging at the beginning. And starting a career from scratch, fresh out of school, was challenging. We started in Beit Shemesh, which was a great landing spot for us because there were a lot of other English speakers there. But still, there were certainly a lot of challenges, not just the language. And then I entered the army shortly afterwards, which certainly helped improve my Hebrew. But there was a learning curve for sure.
Yeah. Because it's you're going from English to an entirely new language. How is your now?
Oh, good. I work in Hebrew most of the time. Yeah. I mean, I've been here over 11 years already.
Yeah, I was about to say, this makes it 11 years, right? 2023.
That's
Okay.
right.
So do
That's
you
right.
consider yourself Israeli now?
It's funny because I feel inside like I'm still culturally American. However, when I go visit my family in the States, they look at me as the Israeli. So I can't win. Wherever I am, I'm the opposite. But yes, I work in Hebrew. People still look at me as the American. And my kids, I'm very careful with my kids to speak to them in English. It's very important. They're in school here, they're getting their Hebrew. But at home, I do make sure to speak to them and read to them in English and make sure that they're keeping up. as well.
That's really important. And moving
Yeah.
to a country, oftentimes you're left alone. Like if someone moves from Trinidad and Tobago to the US, there's nothing there for you, no programs there to help you acclimatize. But Israel does have those kinds of easing
Yes.
in immigrants. Could you tell us a bit about what the Israeli government does to help immigrants ease into Israeli society?
Sure. They've got so many programs to help immigrants, not just English-speaking immigrants, but they've got programs for anybody that immigrates to Israel. Oh, I don't even know where to start. Well, there's monetary packages which help at the beginning. There's, they help with municipal taxes at the beginning, bringing a lift overseas with all your things. They lower the taxes on that for you so you can bring your things over. They teach ulpan, which is they give you classes in Hebrew and how to speak the language. They try to help you find a job. Especially the Jewish agency also works with a company called Nefesh B'Nefesh that really helps, especially English-speaking immigrants, find like sister families to help them acclimate, people that check in on them and make sure they have what they need and know how to read their bills and can generally helps them learn how to function at the beginning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really good. But I can't imagine it being financially easy for the government to do this. So I know that a lot of Christian support for Israel does go into helping the government and helping the Jewish agency acclimatize new immigrants. But
Yeah.
specifically, were there any sort of assistance you got from the Christian community or anything? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we did. Actually, Nefesh B'Nefesh directed us to a Christian agency, which did give us some money, which we used towards our lift to bring our things over. Yeah, it was very kind and very generous and helpful, for sure.
That's really good. I'm so glad to hear that it's impacted you personally. But let's move
Yeah,
on to a wider perspective now. Let's look at Christian support for Israel as a whole. How
sure.
important do you think, as an Israeli, that you have evangelicals around the world supporting Israel?
Well, it certainly reinforces the idea of Israel as the Jewish homeland. Christian support worldwide helps shape policies in their own countries that help defend and protect Israel's right to survive and thrive here in our homeland. And that's no small thing.
You said earlier that you moving to Israel is sort of a biblical mandate. It's the fulfillment of the 2,000-year-old dream, as you said. Do you
Sure.
think that Christians supporting Israel is also contributing to their fulfillment of a biblical directive for them?
From my understanding, yes.
Okay, okay, that's good. Um, David, you are religiously Jewish. You're modern Orthodox. Do you think good relations between Christians and Jews is a commandment? Is it important?
It's a commandment to have good relationships with all people, period. Christians specifically, I think Jews and Christians do have a special alliance because, and not just because of friendship and solidarity, but more importantly, the advancement of Judeo-Christian ideals, specifically the family unit, morality, kindness, service to mankind. These are ideals that I think Jews and Christians share in particular.
I love that answer. I love that answer. To pull back and go back to when we talked about you being Israeli, a lot
Sure.
of people are aware of the complexities of being Israeli. It's not just a monolith. There are a lot of tribal affiliations. There's a lot of political identifications. Tell me a bit about you. Where do you fall on the spectrum of Israeliness?
The spectrum of Israeliness. Okay. Well, yes, I'm religious. Um, More religious people here tend to lean right. We're more conservative. Um, I'm, as I said before, I'm a father. I'm conservative. We're very pro-family, pro-life, pro-settling the land of Israel, making sure that this is a safe place for Jews and really everybody to live comfortably and peaceably. Sure.
I love that answer. So you describe yourself as right. Now, I think especially for Western audiences, they tend to associate right wing with the larger American idea of what right wing means. But there's a
Mhm.
right Israeli right and American right. You mind explaining that?
Sure. Well, panning out, there
Hmm.
are some general similarities between the right of of Israel and the right of the U.S. and the left of Israel and the left of the U.S. I mean, there's some stark differences as well. Uh, you can say, in general terms, that the right more leans towards those Judeo-Christian values of family being the central unit, of service to the community, while the left tends to lean towards secularism, separating church and state more. Um, it's more about personal fulfillment than it is about community.
Hmm.
That's just in general. However, there's so many differences between the US and Israel and how we function. Like in Israel right now, our biggest issues are judicial reform, building communities for our overpopulated cities, and the cost of living is a big deal right now here. In the US, it seems the conversation is more about gender ideology, gun control. Also, I know inflation is a big deal right now as well, but there's different issues that the countries are dealing with, so that that does cause a little bit of a difference between the right here and the right there, the left here and the left there.
That's
Yeah,
a really good summation. You said that settlement of the land of Israel is something that's very important, and
sure.
is a identifying characteristic of the right in Israeli politics. But I know you're not a politician.
No.
Give us a layman's perspective, or maybe even your religious perspective, on what the settler movement is and how it fits in specifically with your religious ideology and political ideology.
Sure. Look, the settler movement intends to build Israel. You know, on the map, we're a pretty small country, but we do have these vast spaces that are open and fertile and ready for building. And our large cities are way overpopulated and way overpriced. And for young couples, and growing families, it's just impossible. It's impossible for a starting off fresh young couple to just live in Jerusalem comfortably. Uh, so for them to find a nice place to settle is not so easy. And to think that Jews living in our homeland, there are areas in the country that we are not allowed to be in, when other people in this country are allowed to be wherever they want. There's no shortage of Muslims and Christians in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, in other cities, even in the West Bank. They can live wherever they want, but Jews are not allowed. And that's something that I feel is simply ridiculous. Like, we should all be able to live here peaceably and should be able to settle wherever we can here. There's space and people need it.
It's interesting what you say because I think in the beginning in 1967, when the settler movement started, it was largely ideological. Now we're seeing that the settler movement is really financial. It's easier to live.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't want to live there because it's simply dangerous to just settle outside the comfortable boundaries, yes? But obviously, yes, there is the ideology. This is our homeland. This is where we're supposed to be. And certainly the financial push is a big deal nowadays, for sure.
Um, just to go off script a bit, we're talking about the settler movement, and we're seeing a rise, somewhat extremist behavior from settlers. How are you dealing with that? Because I don't think that's part of your identity or makeup to be extremist in the way that some of them are behaving right now.
No, in that way, I'm very American. I like to be very, you know, more, I guess, politically correct. No, I don't see myself being an activist in any way. I'm opinionated, of course. Okay. But I don't think I would have the courage to move out to the middle of nowhere and settle. I'm here with my kids in established schools. Um, Ideologically, I would love to be able to do that and to be part of something new and fresh and important. Um, but no, our lives are here in the city where I work and where our kids go to school. And yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense. Because it is like it's like the Wild West, the pioneer movement when you go into the West Bank, in
yeah,
Jewish. Um, David, David, sorry, what does it mean to be? The two questions, sets of questions I want to ask you here. So I'll focus on one. What does
sure,
it mean Jewish and Israeli? Because there is a distinction, and how do you marry the both?
for sure, for sure. Uh, Being Jewish, regardless of Israel, you can be Jewish anywhere in the world. There are thriving, amazing communities throughout the world. Obviously, in America, almost every city has a great, thriving community. Anywhere throughout the world, you can find Chabad, making sure that everybody has all the resources they need. Being Israeli is different. One, you can be Israeli and not Jewish, right? There's plenty of people here that are Israeli, that hold blue passports here, that are not Jewish. However, ideally, as a Jew, to be in Israel, there are more commandments to fulfill that are specific to the land of Israel. Like we just finished this last year was a sabbatical year, which meant for farming, there are different laws that we performed only here in Israel. So, and beyond that, just being in the Jewish state for the holidays is just so much more meaningful. You know, you grow up in America and you have off for Christmas, and obviously we don't celebrate that, but that's everywhere you go, Mariah Carey is playing. You know, you can't get away from it. But here in Israel, you see Hanukkah everywhere. You can't escape it. It's part of the culture, it's part of the environment. And that's true of any holiday here. And it just feels more personal.
Yeah, because you're working on the Jewish calendar in Israel, so you're around everything. And you said something very interesting there. Two things. Could you explain to our audience what Chabad is, and secondly,
Oh,
could you bit about
sure.
because Judaism
Uh,
is it's an indigenous religion to the land of Israel. So could you tell us one, which what is Chabad, and two, how is the indigenousness of Judaism expressed in Israel?
okay. Two great questions. Chabad is an organization of, of, of one sect of ultra Orthodox Judaism who believes mainly in bringing people closer to the religion. And they provide services throughout the world, making sure that kosher food is available in the most remote areas of the planet for people traveling, for people that live there. Not just kosher food, but making sure that they have access to phylacteries or any other commandment that they could possibly fulfill. Chabad is the organization that makes sure that those resources are available to people. The other question about it is, like I said, there are commandments that are specific to Jews living in Israel. There's a different level of holiness here. You know, we're closer to the cornerstone of the world. Like this is it. It's here. And for us to be able to connect that way and work the land the way it's supposed to be or not supposed to be as it is during the sabbatical year is very, it's very real. You feel the Judaism here.
Yeah,
I
and
hope that answers the question.
it does, because it leads to another question, which is, you said the cornerstone. Could you explain what the cornerstone is in Judaism? This what is the Temple Mount? What is Bet HaMikdash? Could you explain that and what it means to you to be living so close to it?
Sure. I mean, just from the commentators on the Bible, it's pretty clear that the place where the Temple Mount is was the cornerstone of the world. That's where Adam and Eve were brought down. That's where all of our forefathers were at different points even before, way before it was the Temple Mount. Abraham was there, Isaac was there, Jacob was there, all for different reasons. And just to, I'm right here on the road I live right on the road that leads to the old city. And just knowing that this is the road that Jacob and his children walked down coming from Bethlehem to the Temple Mount is like, I can look out my window and say, this is exactly where they walked. It's such a clear, straight line. And to live here and know that, and just know this is the place, this is the history, you can go to the Temple Mount and pray and know this is where everybody has prayed, and where every day people all over the world face towards here to pray. Like, this is it. This is where it happens. This is the source.
That's a beautiful,
or the physical source on earth that we have.
I love that answer. I love that you can look out onto the street and you see exactly, well, the sky is the same, not always the same rocks because there are buildings everywhere.
For sure. Right.
Is that, are you living on Bethlehem or on Hebron?
And there, Hebron. And okay. Hebron, yeah.
Yeah, that's I mean, beautiful, beautiful stretch of land that you can see that walkway and that pathway. And I think one of the things, the special things about living in Israel is that you're able to put yourself into the lives of the patriarchs and the matriarchs, and you're able to reflect and wonder, what did Abraham and Isaac talk about on the walk back home from the binding,
Right. Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about when it comes to being Israeli and the minority groups in Israel who are not Jewish? What are your thoughts about them? How are they incorporated into being Israel? How important do you see them as part of your Israeli identification?
Oh, sure. I mean, Jerusalem in particular and the country in general, it's important to all of us, to Jews, Christians, and afterwards Muslims as well. This is the history of all of us is here. You can't deny that. This is a place for all of us. It's clearly supposed to be the Jewish homeland, but we were also exiled. We were in Egypt. We were strangers in a foreign land as well. And it's mentioned in the Torah so many times that we're supposed to be kind to everybody that's living with us, to remember that we were also strangers somewhere else. And it's mentioned so many times we're supposed to put the stranger and the widow and the orphans ahead of everybody, including ourselves. So yeah, it's pretty important to recognize that there are other people here as well that hold the same citizenship that we do. Is it their land? No, it's our land, but they have a place here as well, and they're welcome and can do everything that every other citizen here can do.
I love that. I loved how you said it's basically the story of mankind. Jerusalem, Israel, it's the story of mankind, and everyone has a place there. I remember, like, one of the things coming from Trinidad and Tobago and the Trinidadian population, we're very mixed here. We have Hindus, we have Christians, we have Buddhists, we have everything here. And moving to Israel, when I moved to Israel, seeing Hare Krishnas run down Bograshov streets, it's affirming for me that Israel is this welcoming, wonderful place that I think a lot of people are unaware of as to how diverse it is. And this brings me to my next question for you, which is sometimes a contradictory sort of thing that Israel is, because you said it's our land, but we welcome the stranger. It's the Jewish homeland, but at the time it's democratic. And those two things sometimes come into conflict. What are your thoughts on Israel's nature, its defining nature from its birth as being Jewish and democratic?
Sure. It's recognizing, one, that this is the Jewish homeland. Yes, society and culture is built around the Jewish holidays, as we mentioned before. But at the same time, even more so than the US, this is a democracy. Everybody has a say here. In the US, there's the Electoral College, and that doesn't exist here. Here, your vote literally counts. Much more so than there. Do I like everything I see in politics here? no. Uh, but it's nice to know that everybody here has a voice. Jew, Christian, Muslim, it doesn't matter. Everybody has a voice in the Knesset here. And everybody has a right to be here, and everybody can enjoy all the rights and privileges of living here and being a citizen. But at the end of the day, it is overall, in general, culturally Jewish here.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful answer, which leads me to my last question for you, which is, what is your favorite thing about Israel? And whether it's a restaurant or whatever it is, what's the thing about Israel and living?
It's the holidays. Do you know what my absolute favorite thing is? Especially from the Torah, we're supposed to go up for the 3 major holidays. We're supposed to visit Jerusalem and the temple. And living here in Jerusalem, and I haven't always lived in Jerusalem here. I've lived in Haifa, I've lived in Beit Shemesh, I've lived in other places here. But living here on Derech Havron in Jerusalem, being able to walk on a holiday with my son to the Temple Mount is the most special thing here. For sure. That is a special time for both of us. My 2 younger kids are not up for the walk. Fine, it's a good 40-minute walk. But my oldest son, that's a very special time for us on the holidays to be able to walk. Yeah.
Could you just, last question, because you said the 3 holidays, could you explain to our viewers what these 3 holidays are, the pilgrimage festivals?
Sure. Passover, the first one, Shavuot, and Sukkot are the 3 major holidays that we visit the Temple Mount for.
And you do the walk up to, do you go actually to the Temple Mount, or do you go to the Western Wall, the Kotel?
Yeah, just the Western Wall, yeah.
Okay. Have you ever been up to the Temple Mount?
I have not, no.
Okay. Sorry, saying this is the last question, but the conversation is so interesting. Could you give one last thing, which is why you wouldn't go to the Temple Mount?
Sure. It's according to the written law, it's not so simple. Yes, I would love to go visit, but to prepare yourself spiritually beforehand, yes, there's a way to do it. That involves it involves prayers. It involves dipping in a ritual bath. It involves separating yourself for 3 days. Like there's different things that are involved to make yourself worthy of going up to the Temple Mount that I just haven't been able to prepare for yet. I'd like to. But it's not as simple as just saying waking up one day and deciding to walk up to the Temple Mount. No.
Yeah, it's something.
It's not a tourist attraction. It's a big deal.
Yeah, something you really have to spiritually, physically prepare for.
Yeah.
Dovid, I thank you so much for this conversation. I really enjoyed
My pleasure.
You gave a lot of beautiful answers and shed light on a lot of different things I think was very appreciative of. And hopefully one day we can host you in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for this enlightening discussion.
My pleasure. Thanks for talking to me. I had a great time with you.
Thank you, Dovid. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.